My fiancée took my ring off after every fight, so I took it back, sold it, and spent the money on myself without telling her. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I thought I was living in a dream. When she said yes, I felt like the luckiest man alive. Friends and family showered us with congratulations, and for a moment, I let myself believe that this was exactly how love was supposed to feel. She was charming, witty, effortlessly magnetic, the kind of woman who made everyone around her smile, but for some reason, she reserved her sharpest edges for me. At first, I brushed it off as quirks, little idiosyncrasies that I could tolerate because, well, love. The engagement ring was something I picked myself, a sleek silver band with a modest diamond that felt like it matched her style. I remember sliding it onto her finger, feeling her gasp, that little half smile that made my chest tighten. But soon after, I noticed a tiny unsettling pattern. After every argument, even small ones, she would take the ring off. Always with a calm, almost casual air, like it wasn't about respect or trust, but control. "I'll just keep it safe," she'd say, tucking it away, and I would nod, too stunned to argue. That first time I laughed nervously, assuming it was nothing. I didn't know it would become a habit, a weapon, a constant reminder that I wasn't really in charge of my own life. We spent nights in our apartment, the city lights bleeding through the blinds, our arguments rising and falling like waves. I remember the smell of her perfume, heavy and sweet, mixing with the cold, metallic scent of the ring when she placed it on the counter. I tried to talk to her once, voice low and cautious. "Hey, why do you take the ring after every fight?" She just shrugged, eyes distant, and said, "It's not a big deal." I swallowed my unease and laughed it off, even as a pit formed in my stomach. Deep down, I felt that first prick of doubt, an itch I couldn't scratch, but I ignored it. I told myself love required patience. I told myself this was normal, and that's when the subtle tension began, sneaking into quiet moments, making me question if I was really the man she wanted, or if I was just someone to manage, to test, to control. I had no idea that this was only the beginning. It happened the first real time we fought. I can still feel the knot in my chest as she stood there, arms crossed, eyes flashing with that familiar mix of frustration and control. The argument was stupid, really. Something about dinner plans that didn't go the way she wanted, but the air between us thickened instantly. I was mid-sentence, trying to explain myself, when she just calmly slid the ring off her finger. The metallic click against the counter felt louder than anything else in the room, echoing in a way that made my stomach twist. "I'll just keep it safe," she said, her voice soft but firm, like she was setting a rule I couldn't challenge. I froze. "Safe?" I asked, trying to mask the rising panic in my voice. "Yeah," she replied, eyes not meeting mine. "I don't want it to get lost." I laughed nervously, forcing a smile, but inside something was already shifting. That simple act, that casual removal of the ring, sent a ripple of unease through me. It wasn't just about the ring, it was about respect, about boundaries, about how much control she really had over me. And I wasn't ready to admit it yet. I spent the night thinking about it, replaying the moment in my head over and over. I could still smell her shampoo lingering in the air, hear the soft hum of the refrigerator, feel the cold metal under my fingers when I picked up the ring to look at it. The tension was tangible. I realized she wasn't just upset. She was making a statement, one I didn't quite understand. My friends noticed my distracted mood the next day, but I brushed it off, pretending nothing had changed. Deep down, I knew something had shifted. A small, nagging voice whispered that this wasn't normal, that this little pattern could grow into something much darker. But I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself it was love. And just like that, the first red flag settled into my life like an uninvited guest, waiting for the next fight, the next argument, the next click of the ring against the counter. I didn't know then how often that ring would leave my finger, or how it would define the battle that was about to consume our relationship. After that first fight, I started noticing a pattern I couldn't ignore. Every argument, no matter how trivial, ended the same way. The ring came off her finger. At first, I tried to convince myself it was harmless, just a quirky habit. But when it happened a second time, then a third, the pit in my stomach grew heavier. I started counting the fights, the ring removals, like some twisted tally that reminded me how little control I actually had. One evening, after a minor disagreement about weekend plans, she pulled it off again. "You're overreacting," she said when I tried to ask why, tucking the ring into her purse like it was nothing. My voice cracked without me realizing it. "Why do you do this every time we fight?" She shrugged and smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was sharp, almost predatory. "It's just a ring," she said. "Not a big deal." The words stung because I realized that for her, it wasn't about the ring, it was about power. I tried talking to friends about it, carefully, not wanting to sound paranoid. "Maybe it's just a phase," one of them said. But every time I went home, every time she removed the ring, the uneasy feeling returned, stronger. I could feel it in my chest, a tight, anxious pressure, like my love was being tested or twisted into something I didn't sign up for. The apartment felt colder at night. I noticed the faint metallic scent of the ring left on the counter, the way the light from the street lamp reflected off it, mocking me. I started anticipating fights, dreading the familiar click of the ring against the surface. The casual way she would say, "I'll just keep it safe for you." The charm and excitement from the engagement faded, replaced with tension, fear, and doubt, and I couldn't shake it. Something was off. I had this gnawing feeling that this pattern wasn't just a harmless quirk. It was a warning. A warning I wasn't ready to face, and a warning that would soon escalate in ways I couldn't imagine. I should have seen it coming. But I didn't. One evening, while she was in the kitchen, I idly peeked into her jewelry box to grab my watch, and that's when I saw it. All the rings. Every single time she'd taken mine, she hadn't just kept it safe. She had tucked them neatly into a little velvet compartment, like trophies. My chest tightened, my hands shook. She wasn't just removing the ring during fights. She was collecting them, cataloging them, almost like each one was a win over me. I froze, staring at the glittering diamonds under the dim lamp. My mind raced. Why? Why would she do this? A sick part of me felt furious, humiliated. When she walked into the room, I tried to sound casual. "Hey, what's with all these rings?" My voice was steadier than I felt. She looked at me, shrugged, and gave this disarming smile that made my stomach churn. "I like to keep memories," she said. "It's not a big deal. Don't overthink it." But of course I overthought it. How could I not? Each ring was a reminder of my trust being manipulated, of my love being turned into a game. And I had no idea how long this had been happening. The apartment felt suffocating. I could still smell the faint hint of her perfume lingering in the air, the faint metallic tang of the rings, and it all combined into a sense of betrayal I couldn't shake. I tried to speak, tried to argue, but no words felt strong enough. She leaned back, casual, unaware, or deliberately oblivious to the storm she just unleashed inside me. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't just a quirk or even a controlling habit. It was psychological. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a dangerous thought began to form. If she could play with my love and respect this way, maybe it was time I took control too. I didn't know it yet. But nothing would ever feel the same again. After discovering the ring collection, everything changed. Arguments no longer felt like small disagreements. They were calculated traps. Every time I tried to express frustration, she twisted it around, turning my words into evidence that I was overreacting, unreasonable, even selfish. "If you really loved me," she said one night, voice soft but cutting, "you wouldn't care about a ring." "I'm just trying to keep us safe," her words pierced me. Suddenly I wasn't angry anymore. I was questioning myself, my instincts, even my worth. I caught myself replaying conversations over and over, trying to figure out what I had done wrong, what I had missed. What part of me justified this subtle torture? The apartment felt smaller, colder. The faint metallic scent of the rings mixed with her perfume, clinging to everything like a reminder I couldn't escape. Even the city hum outside felt distant, muffled, as if my world had shrunk to the space between us. Friends noticed I was quieter, more withdrawn. "You okay, man?" one asked over drinks. I forced a laugh. "Yeah, just tired." I couldn't admit what was happening. Admitting it felt like losing, like confessing that she had power over me that I hadn't yet reclaimed. Every small fight escalated faster than before, each ending with her removing the ring. But now her explanations carried venom beneath sweetness, guilt beneath calm. "I just want you to understand how I feel," she'd whisper, eyes glinting with satisfaction, knowing I was caught between love and humiliation. By the end of each night, I'd lie in bed, heart pounding, staring at the ceiling, feeling invisible and trapped. The subtle fear, the constant second-guessing, it was eroding me. And yet, buried beneath the frustration and confusion, a tiny spark flickered, a thought that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to let this continue. But I didn't know how far I'd have to go to reclaim what she had quietly stolen from me. That night, after the worst fight we'd ever had, I hit a level of despair I hadn't known existed. It wasn't the argument itself. It was the familiar cold ritual that followed. She had yanked the ring from her finger, set it on the counter and walked away, leaving me staring at the small, glittering circle that had once symbolized love, but now felt like a shackle. My chest ached, my hands trembled, and for the first time, I felt completely powerless in the relationship I had once thought was perfect. I sat alone in the dark, the apartment eerily silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. The metallic scent of the ring lingered, almost mocking me, a reminder that everything I valued, trust, respect, affection, was being quietly taken away. I replayed every fight, every passive-aggressive comment, every subtle humiliation, and the weight crushed me. I realized I had spent months bending to her will, letting her define the rules, letting her manipulate my love into guilt. I thought about walking away. Maybe I should just leave, cut my losses, escape the cycle. But even that felt impossible. Fear of confrontation, fear of shame, fear of being alone, they all held me frozen in place. I was trapped not just by her control, but by my own emotional inertia. I had never felt so small, so invisible, so utterly defeated. The worst part? She didn't even notice. She came back into the room later, humming a tune, sat on the couch scrolling through her phone, and smiled at me as if nothing had happened. That smile, casual and unbothered, sent a shiver down my spine. In that moment, I understood the reality. She didn't care about my feelings, my dignity, or the love I had poured into this relationship. And that's when it hit me. If I didn't act, if I didn't reclaim control somehow, I would be crushed completely. Something had to change. Something had to give. I just didn't know yet what I was willing to do. I couldn't keep feeling powerless, not after months of this silent torment. That night, staring at the ring sitting untouched on the counter, a dangerous thought crept into my mind. What if I took it back? Not just in anger, not just to protest, but to reclaim control over something that had been used to manipulate me. My heart raced as I considered it, adrenaline mixing with fear and the tiniest spark of excitement. For the first time in months, I felt the stirrings of agency, and it was intoxicating. I waited until she left the apartment the next day, humming a tune as usual, oblivious to my storm of thoughts. With trembling hands, I slipped the ring from the counter into my pocket. Its weight was heavier than I remembered, almost symbolic, a physical manifestation of the power she had been holding over me. I stared at it, thinking about all the fights, all the manipulation, all the subtle ways she had made me doubt myself. The temptation to keep it somewhere safe, to hide it from her, was irresistible. I began imagining possibilities, each one more thrilling than the last. I could return it quietly, never speaking of it again, but that felt unsatisfying. I could confront her, but I wanted the upper hand, not a fight. And then the idea hit me, reckless but appealing. Sell it. Use the money for myself. Reclaim not just the ring, but my sense of worth, my autonomy, my freedom. Even writing the thought down made my pulse quicken. Could I really do it? Was it selfish, petty, or finally justified? The answer didn't matter yet. What mattered was that for the first time in months, I felt alive. Not crushed, not manipulated, not invisible. I had a plan, and it was only the beginning. The only question that lingered, the one that kept me awake at night, was, what would happen if she ever found out? The next day I moved carefully, making sure she had no clue. I didn't rush. Every step had to feel natural, effortless, like nothing had changed. The ring sat in my pocket, cold against my skin, a reminder of months of humiliation and subtle control. I could feel my pulse quicken every time I imagined her noticing it gone, but I pushed the thought aside. This wasn't about deceit. This was about reclaiming what she had been using to manipulate me. I found a small, discreet jeweler downtown, one of those places tucked into an alleyway that felt invisible to the world. The transaction was quick, too quick, almost unreal. The cold metal of the ring was replaced with crisp bills, the sound of cash sliding into my hand louder than any argument I'd endured. I stepped outside, the afternoon sun hitting my face, and for the first time in months, I felt a rush of pure relief. Freedom. Finally tangible, tingling in my fingers along with the money. I walked the streets slowly, savoring the feeling, thinking about all the things I could do. A part of me laughed silently at the irony. She had tried to control me with a ring, and now that same ring was funding my independence, my tiny victories. I imagined the looks on her face if she ever realized, the disbelief, the shock, maybe even the rage. But I pushed those thoughts aside. This wasn't about revenge yet. This was about me, finally prioritizing myself. The apartment felt different when I returned, lighter somehow, as if the very air knew that the balance had shifted. I could hear her humming in the kitchen, completely unaware of the storm that had quietly passed through her life without a sound. And in that silence, I realized something. I had taken the first real step toward taking back my life. But even with that triumph, a flicker of doubt lingered. Would she ever find out? And if she did, would I be ready for what came next? For the first time in months, I felt like I was breathing again. The money from the ring wasn't just cash. It was proof that I could make decisions for myself, that I could reclaim parts of my life she had tried to control. I spent it quietly at first, small indulgences. A dinner at a place I loved, but she hated. A new jacket I'd been eyeing. The freedom to walk through life without her constant, subtle judgment pressing on me. Each purchase, each choice, felt like a tiny rebellion and a reclaiming of my identity. I noticed changes in myself almost immediately. I held my head higher, laughed louder, and no longer twisted my words to avoid triggering another argument. She was still around, still removing the ring during fights, or at least trying, but it didn't have the same weight anymore. The ring was gone. The power it once held over me had vanished. For the first time, I realized how much of myself I had been surrendering without even noticing. Even simple moments felt like victories. Sitting on the balcony one evening, I could smell the city air mixed with the faint aroma of coffee from the cafe below, and I realized I was savoring life again. I caught myself smiling at nothing in particular, a rare and pure pleasure that had been missing for months. Each laugh, each confident step reminded me that I was no longer invisible, no longer a passive participant in my own life. Yet beneath the freedom and exhilaration, a tension remained. She hadn't noticed, or maybe she had, but chose to pretend, but I could feel the shift in the air between us. Every glance she gave me now carried a hint of suspicion, a subtle edge I hadn't seen before. And that edge, that unspoken awareness, made my chest tighten in anticipation. Something was brewing, and I knew I had only just begun to play the game on my terms. The only question lingering in my mind was, how long could I keep this balance before the storm returned? It didn't take long for her to notice something had changed. I could see it in the way her eyes lingered on me a little longer, the subtle tilt of her head when I answered casually, the faint suspicion in her voice when she asked about the ring, though I never mentioned it. "You seem different," she said one evening, scrolling through her phone, eyes sharp. I shrugged, trying to sound nonchalant, but inside my chest was pounding. I knew she was testing me, trying to figure out what had shifted. Every conversation became a delicate dance. I learned to deflect, to answer without giving away too much, to let her think she was still in control while secretly holding the upper hand. It was intoxicating, this reversal of roles, but it came with its own tension. Each glance she threw my way, each pointed question, reminded me that the game wasn't over. She was clever, calculating, and I had to be sharper. At night, I replayed scenarios in my head. What would I say if she directly confronted me about the ring? How far could I push before it exploded? The apartment felt charged, electric with anticipation. Every sound, her laughter in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator, the city outside, heightened my awareness. I felt alive finally, but the thrill came with fear. One misstep could undo all the freedom I'd reclaimed. And then, just as I thought I had control, a pang of doubt struck me. What if she discovered the truth? What if her anger was more than I could handle? The questions lingered, gnawing at the edges of my newfound confidence. But beneath the tension, a sense of anticipation pulsed. Something had shifted irreversibly between us, and soon, the confrontation that had been quietly brewing would demand its due. I could feel it coming. I just didn't know exactly when or how explosive it would be. The day came sooner than I expected. She walked into the apartment, her usual confidence in place, but something in her eyes had changed, a flicker of suspicion, of calculation, of uncertainty. I could feel the tension coil between us like a live wire. She tried her usual casual questions, small jabs about my recent independence, but I held my ground, calm, almost untouchable. Every word I spoke was deliberate, measured, designed to maintain the edge I had gained over months of manipulation. Finally, she asked directly, "What did you do with the ring?" My stomach clenched, not from fear, but from exhilaration. I looked at her, letting silence stretch like a blade. "It's gone," I said softly, almost too casually. Her eyes widened, disbelief flashing, and then the anger came, silent, simmering, palpable. She couldn't process it immediately, couldn't turn the situation back to her advantage. For the first time, she had no control. I watched her shift in real time. The small, calculated movements, the sudden tension in her shoulders, the frantic calculation behind her eyes. All those months of manipulation, all the subtle games, all the trophies she had kept, it meant nothing now. I felt an unexpected surge of satisfaction, not cruel, but deeply just. I had reclaimed my autonomy, my sense of self, my dignity. She asked, voice trembling. "Why? Why would you do that?" I smiled faintly, the calm in my tone carrying more power than any argument. "Because I deserve to feel respected," I said. "Because love shouldn't cost your soul." The apartment was quiet, the weight of the revelation settling between us. And for the first time in this relationship, I felt fully, completely free. The storm had passed. The game had ended. And though she would never fully understand, I knew I had won the only thing that truly mattered. Myself. But even in victory, a faint thought lingered. How long before she tried to test me again? In the quiet aftermath, I finally had space to breathe. The apartment felt lighter, freer, almost like it had been holding its own breath for months. I sat by the window, sunlight spilling across the floor, and let myself feel everything I had been too tense to notice before. Relief, empowerment, and a strange, quiet pride. I hadn't just taken back a ring, I had taken back myself. Every small indulgence, every decision I made without her influence, was a reminder that my life belonged to me and me alone. I thought about the months of subtle manipulation, the passive-aggressive digs, the games she had played, and I realized how close I had been to losing myself completely. But I hadn't. I had learned boundaries, self-respect, and the hard truth that love should never feel like a trap. The lessons stung, but they were mine, hard-earned and unforgettable. The city outside hummed with life, oblivious to the emotional battles fought in this small apartment, and I smiled at the irony. I had been trapped by love, by control, by expectation, and now I was free. I felt the weight lift from my shoulders, a calm replacing the tension that had gripped me for months. Even the memory of her, the manipulation, the anger, it no longer had power over me. I took a deep breath, letting it fill every corner of my chest, and thought, maybe this is what real love should feel like. Freedom, respect, and the ability to stand tall without fear. I had survived the manipulation, the games, and the heartbreak, and come out stronger, wiser, and unapologetically myself. and as I watched the sunlight glint off the empty counter where the ring had once sat, I knew one thing for certain. I would never let anyone, not even someone I loved, hold that much power over me again. I had finally reclaimed my life, and it felt unstoppable.